So long as the Roman dominion lasted, soldiers were maintained in many towns at the public expense to guard the boundary wall. When this custom ceased, the squadrons of soldiers and the boundary wall were blotted out together. The troop at Batavis, however, held out. Some soldiers of this troop had gone to Italy to fetch the final pay of their comrades, and no one knew that the barbarians had slain them on the way. One day, as St. Severinus was reading in his cell, he suddenly closed the book and began to sigh greatly and to weep. He ordered the bystanders to run out with haste to the river, which he declared was in that hour besprinkled with human blood. And straightway word was brought that the bodies of the soldiers mentioned above had been brought to land by the current of the river. So wrote Eugenius in the Hagiography of St. Severinus of Noricum, compiled sometime in the first decade of the 500s, describing the life and deeds of the saint who lived between 410 and 482. This anecdote is one of the last sources that we have for the Roman army in the West during the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Which leads me to the subject of both this video and the companion video, which will be released later on. The late Roman Empire had a military numbering in the hundreds of thousands, and while much of the scholarly discussion has pushed the end of the empire in terms of a loss of Roman identity and the full breakdown of the economy and the end of urbanism into the middle of the 6th century, culminating in Justinian's wars of reconquest, there still very much was an end to the Western Empire in the sense of a unified territory, as a political unit, controlled by an emperor based out of Ravenna or some other capital city. And any attempt to grapple with those events will need to deal with the situation of the military at some point. And there is an idea that's floated around from time to time that the Roman Empire met its end because the military, essentially, became dominated by non-Romans, that is to say, by barbarians who were not loyal to the Roman state. This video will briefly explore this idea, and the companion video will tackle what exactly happened to that army when the Western Empire broke up politically at the end of the 5th century. So, concerning barbarians and their supposed dominance in the late Roman army, what can we say about it? Well, there are two major views on this. The first view is varied, to say the least, and it is varied because it is criticizing or responding to the second view, which is informally known as the Liebeschuetz thesis. Any attempt to get an answer as to the fate of the Western army and the subject of barbarian service ultimately has to deal with it, so what exactly is this theory? John Hugo Wolfgang Gideon, or JHWG Liebeschuetz, was one of the most prominent historians of the late Roman Empire, having recently passed in 2022. And in the early 1990s, a collection of papers was published in a volume entitled War and Society in the Roman World, which contained a paper penned by Liebeschuetz entitled The End of the Roman Army in the Western Empire. It is extremely difficult, if not impossible, in the absence of highly detailed records to really quantify to what degree non-Roman troops increased in Roman military service. This had always been an aspect of Roman policy, and there is a whole legal procedure to the recruitment and integration of non-Roman troops from beyond the borders, known as receptio, a term meaning something like formal surrender, that was employed from the Republican period right up until the end of the 4th century with little to no issue. Something which is detailed rather well in Thomas Burns's Barbarians Within the Gates of Rome, a study of military policy and the barbarians, 375 to 425. And we know that, beginning in the 2nd century, the Romans began to recruit from as far away as southern Norway. This is, incidentally, what we think the sacrifice at Illerop Edel actually is. An army of several thousand men who landed in Denmark from somewhere else in Scandinavia, possibly Norway or maybe southern Sweden, on their way to join the Roman army, but they were defeated in a battle and they never made it to their destination. The lack of solid statistics has, however, not stopped some historians from attempting to quantify this. Hugh Elton, for example, attempts to do this in his book Warfare in Roman Europe, AD 350 to 425, And his conclusion is that it is maybe, and I do want to stress, maybe 20 to 25% of the serving members of the military having non-Roman origin. To what extent that is a significant increase from percentages in the early empire is, however, again extremely difficult, almost impossible to really quantify. Work by Elting and others like Liebeschuetz and those who both agree and disagree with him indicate that even if you have a military unit comprised entirely of non-Romans, that is to say, barbarians, they do not seem to have been any more or less loyal to the Roman Empire than the standard Roman military unit in late antiquity. And we should also keep in mind that up until the Edict of Caracalla, which granted universal citizenship in 212, something like half of the military units in the Roman army were made up of non-citizens, including those recruited from barbarians. So put simply, the concept that the Roman Empire essentially collapsed because non-Romans came to dominate the military is not taken seriously by historians of late antiquity. And yet, in 410, Alaric and his Goths sacked the city of Rome, and the Roman military seemed unable to stop him. So what exactly was going on? This is where we come back to the Liebeschuetz thesis. Its main argument, boiled down, is essentially as follows. Alaric sacks Rome in 410, and several years before that, when he invades Italy in 401, Rome's chief general, Stilicho, had to oppose him, and he opposed Alaric by withdrawing troops from the frontier and also by raising units formed from defeated barbarians who were present in Italy. So then, in all of this, where is the regular Roman army? Well, the army in late antiquity was divided into two major groups. There is the regular military and all of their subdivisions, and there are federates, which were drawn from non-Roman sources of manpower, typically from across the frontiers, and those federates either served for a campaign, or they were formally part of the military structure and they received pay after being broken up through receptio and incorporated into other more permanent units. Essentially, they were dispersed. The Liebeschuetz thesis is that it is not that the Romans recruited too many barbarians or anything like that, and that the military was thus disloyal. Rather, it is that the standard army units, beginning in the 400s, refused or generally did not want to function outside of their immediate garrison or billeting area, leading to the military to begin to rely increasingly on federates to fight and win battles, and would begin to take the form of distinct military units in their own right. That is to say, rather than recruiting, say, 5,000 Goths and then dispersing them across the army as a whole, those 5,000 formed a new standing unit in its own right for the long term. Essentially, rather than the overall composition of the Roman army drastically changing in late antiquity, the strategies applied by the military shifted instead. This does have some merit to it, at the very least. There are references to milites and other military terms in the 5th century West, but also in the 6th century Frankish and Ostrogothic kingdoms, which seem to suggest that Roman troops, or at least units derived from the regular Roman army, functioned mainly as garrison troops. And in the first half of the 5th century, we know that the Western Empire's two key generals, Constantius and Aetius, utilized federate troops to devastating effect, while seemingly not using standard Roman units. Our sources for this are pretty fragmentary, especially for Aetius, whose campaigns cannot be reconstructed in any really meaningful detail. Indeed, in one particular instance, we're not even sure of the year of a campaign. But we are informed that Constantius specifically sends the Visigoths to fight against the usurper Constantine, and in the process he retakes much of Gaul. Constantius also sends federate troops to fight the Vandals in Spain, and he wins against them. This is rather astounding because prior to the 5th century, sending federate troops specifically to do this would have been unthinkable. Aetius does something similar regarding the Huns, with whom he appears to have had extremely good relations prior to the rise of Attila. Both of these generals had personal followings of troops, known as bucellari. Aetius specifically had a contingent of Huns, but there were other generals and bureaucrats who had private followings drawn from both Roman and non-Roman groups in their personal, private employ. What this represents is a new element in the late Roman army in the 5th century, which recalls the private or semi-privatized militaries at the end of the Republican period. And it is thanks to Aetius' relationship with the Huns that we can probably explain both his reinstatement as general under Valentinian III, when he had previously backed a usurper named John, and his reinstatement as general after being exiled in the early 430s after a civil war. It is important to note here that the late Roman army between 400 and 450 actually win the majority of their engagements, which is why defeats stand out. And generally the defeats appear to have been minor engagements, excepting Adrianople and the Frigidus. But still, attrition through defeats and victories did take its toll. But that attrition does not appear to have been completely devastating until 451. What that means, essentially, is that despite the rise of the Bucellari, the military was far from ineffective, and it was the rise of the Bucellari, not an increase in non-Roman forces, which seems to have made rebellions or command issues more complicated than they had previously. In other words, it's not necessarily because the Roman army recruited too many barbarians. The countervailing opinion to the Liebeschuetz thesis is that the regular units of the Roman army do in fact show up in the 5th century, fighting alongside the federates. In other words, we see the Roman quote-unquote military still doing its job and not being reduced to garrison duty or refusing to operate outside of their immediate billeting areas. The key to this is that the texts which survive from this period that mention military matters have to be read while keeping in mind that many of our authors, because they were late antique aristocrats and generally well educated, showed off that education by classicizing their writing. And an example of this would be the revival of a style of Greek writing in late antiquity that matches the style of Thucydides, who was writing in the 5th century BC. At the Battle of the Catalaunian Fields in 451, when Aetius put together a coalition of the willing to face off against Attila, when Theodoric and his Visigoths are present at the battle, we can understand them to indeed be a Visigothic army. The listing of other peoples, however, is not so cut and dry. Rome settled groups in late antiquity through a system called hospitalitas. Initially, this was designed for billeting troops in houses, but the work of a historian named Walter Goffart argues that this was a switch in late antiquity to tax revenue rather than land or billeting in exchange for military service as federates. However, there is a change in terms in both Latin and Greek during this period to refer to these federates who were settled via hospitalitas, and with the classicizing efforts of the writers in mind, the listing of barbarian federates called up no longer seems to refer to units composed of non-Romans per se, so much as it is similar to listing out the cities which sent ships to Troy as recounted by Homer, and with the classicizing motifs in mind, the description, as we have it, of the Catalonian plains strongly recalls the Battle of Marathon. We don't have any real reason to think that these forces, by this point, were fundamentally non-Roman in the sense of organizational structure or leadership, and in some cases they appear to have actually had Roman leaders. Additionally, we have coin hoards from fortresses and cities where the army was stationed, which correspond to dispersals of pay and bonuses, which you would expect to not find if the army was increasingly dominated by barbarians or privatized troops. Now, regardless of which interpretation you choose, the reasons for Roman military problems in the 5th century do not stem from an increase in non-Roman soldiers, to the extent that this is even verifiable, and at its core, it fundamentally misunderstands what was going on that led to the breakup of the Western Empire. The 5th century West is characterized by constant civil wars and usurpations, leading to a focus on internal politics by the players in the Western Empire's Game of Thrones, at the expense of ignoring, or at least not focusing as much attention as needed, on events beyond the frontier. The arrival of the Huns, and the formation of what the historian Herwig Wolfram calls the Hunnic alternative, as well as the ever-present threat from the Sasanians, created pressures along both sides of the Roman frontier which had not existed at any other point in time. The failure to adapt adequately to new types of threats such as a rival empire to the north, which had not existed previously, and the insistence of the Roman elite to continue to operate within a political structure which worked well in the 4th century, but which was not sufficient for the challenges of the 5th century, ultimately led to groups of non-integrated barbarians, like the Vandals, being able to devastate Spain and North Africa, wrecking Rome's tax base. This is why Alaric ultimately sacked Rome. There was no indication, really, that Alaric and his Goths had the sack as their end goal. What he wanted was a stronger place in the Roman system. That is to say, the newcomers wanted to become a part of Rome, and the Roman leadership was not willing to play along. It is true, however, that the Western army was significantly reduced in the 450s due to a combination of two major defeats inflicted by Attila in 447 and the stalemate of the Catalonian plains in 451, as well as the loss of wealthy provinces which would have provided money to reconstitute the military. Bearing factors such as these in mind, attributing the fall of the Western Roman Empire simply to an increase in non-Roman troops, when we don't really have much evidence for it, and what evidence we do have is hotly debated, is as simplistic as it is flat out incorrect.